Just get a dildo and less bullshit.
Hi
guys, I'm Jessica.
I'm Asher.
I'm Xavier.
And I'm Leah, and this is
ZULA ChickChats.
Okay, in this episode of ZULA ChickChats, we're gonna be talking about softboys.
Ooh.
Have you heard of this term before?
I literally
Yes.
just heard it when y'all talked about it.
Okay, so for all the people who don't know what this term means, right? Can we define what is a softboy?
Sensitive guys.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
that's what I was gonna say. A bit like a sensitive new age guy.
Okay.
But with a bit of like the kind of like fuckboy sort of like I don't give a shit about you. I'm just gonna string you along and play with your feelings.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's just a strategy that guys play on so that they can hit on girls.
According to Urban Dictionary, it is similar to a fuckboy, but without the cocky attitude. So a softboy will butter up a girl by appealing to her emotions
Yeah.
and showing her sensitive side. So that's what you said, like the
Yeah.
emotions. So she will play up the emotions whether or not he cares about you. You know, he's just out to do it to get to like sleep with you. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Because that's actually the way to a girl's heart these days.
It's-
I feel like,
Yeah.
that's always been the way to my heart. Like, just pretend you care about me. Or actually care about me, not pretend.
Actually care about you.
Actually, yeah.
Correct.
They are like boys lah. I think for me, right, I think that soft boys, right, are just the same as fuck boys. But the only real difference, right, is that they just want to be nicer. They just want to be more sensy. Want to be the good guy.
Are you talking about yourself?
No, I'm a grown ass man.
Oh, sure.
But why is the definition so negative? Maybe like when young people they really don't know what they want.
I mean, that's
And
fair.
like somehow
That's true.
it just like they break up with you lah because they realize that it's not what they wanted.
It's okay to
Yeah, that's
like break
true.
up with someone if that's not what you want, but to repeatedly do it as a way to lure in girls.
Yes.
Like a
And
strategy,
yeah,
right?
and manipulating it to your advantage. Now that's wrong. Like if you just happen to be like soft boy aesthetic and if you're a sensitive new age guy, that's fine. But don't play on that and then pretend they care about a girl's feelings when actually it's just a ploy to get into her pants.
So after we've defined that, right, can we move on into how to spot them? So like, can we compare a fuckboy to like, let's say now the new age version of a softboy? How do you like spot them and what are the differences?
In my opinion, a fuckboy should have good hair. I don't know why, I just feel like it's a thing. You cannot
Your hair is
have like
beautiful.
toy hair and be a fuckboy. It
Okay.
just doesn't fly. Softboy, I just imagine like some tattoos, like white t-shirt, a bit oversized, ripped
Stop
black
it.
jeans, ripped black skinny jeans.
Yeah. Like the F boy in our previous episodes we discussed, right? It's like the very hype beast kind of
Yeah.
guy. No, I think the hair it means like the waxed up hair kind of
Yeah.
look, right? And then they wear all like the big name brands. But let's say for a soft boy, right? So the difference would be like he's not so brand conscious. Is it?
He care more about the fit. You know
Okay.
how it looks, like not about the brands, you know. Like he don't go around and flaunting like, oh man, I'm wearing this new Supreme. He's just wearing some very simple oppa shirt that looks good with the
Oppa?
center parting style. Then like, you know, nowadays that's the style now. So
I think it's not true that they don't care about brands, but it's the kind of brands they care about. Like
Okay.
the F boys will like the very loud type like Gucci or Supreme, but the
for
soft
sure.
boy like the more sophisticated Margiela, like the toned down.
Oh.
Like you cannot see the label, but if you
I
take
know
off his
it.
shirt, you'll see it.
You won't know it. So aside from the looks, right? Like personality-wise, what is the differences? Like, how do you spot like a soft boy behavior?
I mean, definitely they are very sensitive, so they sound like they are very good listeners.
Okay,
Uh,
sure.
Yes.
They totally get your like feminine side.
Okay. Oh my god, yeah.
Spot on.
All these like soft boys, right? They will like all the more like indie things, like you know, like
Yeah.
arts and culture. They will go to like like the film festivals. They'll talk about this new book that has been released. They'll talk about this new like feature film that nobody has seen in Singapore by showing it at the projector on the
Yeah,
don't know what day.
projector.
Do you want to go?
Golden Village.
Correct. Do you want to go?
You just call them hipsters. They are just very hipsters.
A bit like
right?
hipsters,
a
yes.
bit,
They're
a
a bit
bit.
like hipsters.
Correct.
but-
more of like the evolution of fuckboys, I feel.
Yeah, because being a douche doesn't get you anywhere anymore.
Yeah, they
because
know
you
it.
can sniff you out too quickly already.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're a douche, right? But if you're like sensitive and you care about my emotions, hey, I'll hang out with you, you know? Then I cry to you for my problems, the next thing you know, we're banging.
Yeah.
Right?
Then after
Like
that,
that,
it's like, I care about you a lot.
Yeah,
but
but-
you're too good for me.
Oh my god, I fucking hate that line!
But I feel that if the end goal is just to use all these ways and be sensitive to like get into some girl's pants, right? Then it's like nah, rather not have that. Have all the positive traits, you know, the culture and everything. So you said you identify as a soft boy, right?
Yeah, on most of the like except the music, like
Okay.
I know some boys like people like Bon Iver and that kind of hipster music,
Oh,
but I just
wow.
like Katy Perry and Taylor Swift. I'm very mainstream.
Huge Taylor Swift fan. How about you, Xavier?
I think I'm also like more of like a soft boy.
Okay,
because
okay,
like
okay.
I'm also kind of like a sensitive new age guy. Okay, I'm not a player, but
Okay.
I think that for the most part lah, I like to be the listener when
Okay.
someone is talking about their life. Like, so that's who I am lah.
Mm.
And if that definition of a soft boy is that they listen or pretend to listen, then I guess I am.
Okay, so after we've identified all these like, you know, soft boys, right? Have you have any experience having friends like that or experience like dating people like that?
In a way, right, my boyfriend, without the aesthetic and the other cool factors, like dressing or music sense or whatever,
Yeah.
but his character is like quite soft boy also.
Okay,
lah.
okay.
That's why I feel like actually it's quite generic, this term. Like someone who is a good listener, cares about how you feel.
Yeah.
I can vouch for him that it works with girls. Like, you know, guys, they're very appearance based, man. Like,
Yeah.
like straight guys are really just like, oh, hot, not hot, big boobs, big butt, that's it. Like, it's very simple formula for them. But girls, like, they want to know that you care about them.
Usually when it comes to like dating these kind of guys, right? I mean, I've probably encountered a couple. Then when you realize when you talk to them and they're trying to talk to you about like all these like cool hipster things or like, have you gone to this event? Like, it's pretty cool. I was like, whoa. Then I just like, is he really interested in like me or like what is he genuinely interested in?
I wouldn't say that I know a lot of them, but I know a friend who feels very attracted to these people because
Oh.
they also provide a sort of cultural capital to you. So cultural capital and soft boys, right? What they provide is that they provide you with this image that, oh, you're dating somebody who's so
Cultural,
sophisticated.
ah.
Yeah.
Who's so cultural?
Who is more sophisticated. It's like
Okay,
they're more
okay.
high. It's like
High
the high
SES.
SES. It kind of appeals to people who are looking for something deeper.
Like intellect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you have
Okay.
like a soft boy boyfriend, just makes you look more intelligent
Okay.
by
okay.
association.
Yeah.
In that way, soft boys are very attractive to her.
So next question is, why do soft boys treat girls like this way? You know, being like so sensitive to them at the same time, but at the end they're like, oh sorry, I can't deal with this emotionally.
Because a lot of girls fall for it. A lot of girls, what they need is like a listening ear, somebody to just be there.
Yeah.
Like that already is like the first step, right? Like I feel that like mutual attraction and fondness can be cultivated.
Yeah.
So if you keep spending time with someone and he listens to you, he seems to care about you, he seems to want your growth in the right direction. Then after that you fall into the trap and then back and dead.
I think just riding on what she said, soft boys in this day and age they project the right image. And in our generation, image is everything, right?
Correct.
So they are actually very attractive, and because of that, a lot of girls like them. This is something to do with like your outside and your inside don't match. Like you can be very cultivated in your image, but maybe your emotions, like you haven't really deal with it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you haven't grew up enough to know how to handle the emotions, and,
Yeah.
and that's why you treat girls like trash.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's just a very smart strategy because they can just passively like message all these girls and then just leave it there and wait for their reply. Then actively like listen to them. You know, like, oh sorry, I was trying to think what you were saying, and I think this is the solution for you. And they can do this to like multiple girls. It's
So
not-
you've never done it in your life.
Nope.
That was fast.
Confident, no,
Yeah, very fast.
confident,
Actually,
no.
I have.
I agree with what y'all say, and also I think it stems from a place of like insecurity also. Like
Yeah.
the fact that they want to put up this front because they know that they can get that end goal. Like using all these tips and tricks, right? They can get that end goal. At the same time, they don't get the commitment. Which like in most relationships, like a lot of people say, even with the fuckboy episode, the commitment is the part that they don't want. So they want the girlfriend but without the commitment. But in this
Yeah.
case, they want like the emotional like connection, right?
Yeah.
And the sensitivity towards each other, right? To talk about things that they are interested in. Also be like looked at as like someone superior. So last question is, right? What is the advice you can give to people who are dealing with these like soft boys?
If you're like, you know, a guy is trying to be very friendly with you and if he's like being super caring and you're not sure, I think just take it slow.
Yeah.
Don't give the sex too fast because that is quite a main key point to like how soon you will find out whether or not he's a soft boy trying to play you lah.
If this person is dragging it on for too long, right? And you know like something is strange when he's like brush off commitment talks and stuff like that, then maybe you think about it a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I think right, riding on to what she said, right, I think you should just play your cards right. So don't give sex early. I think
So,
is
yeah.
the like the best way really.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
also do not give them the attention so quickly and so much also. So you gotta like space it out.
I think if you know what you want, then you won't attract those kind of people.
Oh my god, that's so true.
I think somebody told me this advice before. It's like we date who we are. So like I think if you are stable, you know what you want, you have your plans, then no amount of games they play can manipulate you.
Wow.
I feel like people fall into those traps because
Wow.
they also enjoy the thrill of it. Part of them lah.
If you feel like he might be a soft boy, just run very far away. So today we talked about soft boys and how to spot them and how to deal with one if you happen to be like caught up with one. Yeah, but then don't be
Like a
confused.
fish.
Maybe sometimes what you think is a soft boy, it's just a nice guy, it's just
Yeah,
misunderstood.
I know, right?
Well, if you have any of these experiences, feel free to share it in the comments below and also let us know what else to talk about next time. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Bye!
Bye.